Okay, we are on Samach Dalet Amud Aleph, right at the top, not at the very top, but very close to top 64A1, the second paragraph. In the Gemara, it's Amar of Tubi on the seventh line. So we're still talking about if the wife is rebelling against the husband, or the husband rebelling against the wife. So according to the Mishnah, if she's rebelling, 7 units of money are deducted from her ksuva, and we saw it was a machlokas if until there's no ksuva left and then they get divorced, or even past the ksuva, we keep deducting for her that she becomes negative. Her balance becomes negative from the fact that if she might inherit something from her side of the family, her husband would be able to collect from that. And then the Gemara said that that was the original thing, but the Chachamim Nimnu V'Gamru, they took a vote and they decided that they will announce for 4 weeks. And at the end of 4 weeks, they forced her to get the divorced. And so the deduction is just over a shorter period of time, there would be a deduction. But there does seem to be a machlokas rishonim. If 4 weeks is a maximum, if they can't negotiate, if the Beis Din can't mediate between the husband and the wife in 4 weeks, is 4 weeks a hard deadline? Which it seems, according to some Rishonim, it is. According to the other Rishonim, it seems that if, they're negotiating, but it's taking longer, it might take more than 4 weeks. And there's other details that are machlokas about do they tell her before they start announcing initials and at the end, or only at the end that we did announce and you didn't do anything, so we're done. So there are different details, machlokas, about that. That's stuff that we were talking, the ideas that we were talking about last time. The very last thing we were talking about is if she was rebelling, if she had certain types of worn out clothes, does she get to keep the clothes or does she not get to keep the clothes? And where we left off last week was, since we don't know if she gets to keep it or not, we paskin that tafsala mafkinan mina. I'm just rereading the last couple lines that we did last time. If she already had these worn out clothes, she gets to keep them. Lo tafsala lo yavinan la. If she didn't take them and they're in the husband's house, he keeps them. Basically, whoever has possession of them will maintain possession of them. She waits 12 months to get a get. And during those 12 months, she does not get mizonos, food. And we saw earlier in the last parak, possibly certain types of medical care from her husband. Okay, so the seventh line on Tamach Dalet Amud Aleph 64A1, the second paragraph. This the second big paragraph. Amar Rav Tuvi bar Kinsa Amar Shmuel. Rav Tuvi bar Kinsa said the name of Shmuel. Kosveni Geras Merid ala Rusa, ve'in Kosveni Geras Merid al Shemeres Yavam. We write a letter of rebellion about an Arusa, and we don't write one on a Shemeres Yavam. So meaning if this woman was engaged, received Kedushin, and then I guess she's refusing to go along to have the Nesuin, we would do this process, maybe not the entire process, but it would be considered rebellious. But if a woman whose husband died and she's waiting for her brother-in-law to do yibum, but she's refusing to go along with the yibum, we don't say that she's been rebellious and she's losing money from the ksuva.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if wife is rebellion,
Mm-hmm.
the husband goes to court, right?
Yeah.
Who's gonna witness for that? Court cannot decide, like he said, she said.
They'll ask
No
her.
witness, mostly.
They'll probably ask her.
Yeah, but she said, no, I didn't.
But again, what does rebellion mean? Is she refusing to do the work? Is she refusing to have relations with him?
She said, no, I didn't. There's no witnesses. It's impossible to have witnesses in this situation. Almost impossible.
Right. So there'll just be some incidental stuff, I guess they would have to figure out. Maybe. Because that, when nowadays someone turns bar mitzvah, so they say an adult. In the time, no. I'm saying something else. In the other times you have to know, did they have two pubic hairs grow? So sometimes it seems the Beis Din might have checkers for certain situations. You need to know, is this person a gadol or a katan or a gadola or a katana? So I mean, you're right. It's not 1984. They're not gonna have a telescreen in the room to see if what's going on. But yeah. Mesave, so they asked against what this psak in the name of Shmuel, that an arusa can be considered a rebellious woman, but a woman who's waiting for yibum would not be considered rebellious. Mesave achasli, the brisa after them, our Mishnah said this rebellious woman could be a case where aruso nesua afilu nida afilu chola afilu shemeres yavam. She could be an arusa nesua shemeres yavam. So the Mishnah, this brisa said that you do write against a shemeres yavam. So how could Shmuel say that you don't? So the Gemara says, "Lo kasha kansha tavahu kansha tavahi." The difference between the brisa and Shmuel is if the brother-in-law wanted to do yibum and she's refusing, or if she is wanting the brother-in-law to do yibum and he doesn't want to do yibum. The Amar Rav Tachlifa Amar Shmuel, because Rav Tachlima Bar Avimi said the name of Shmuel Tava, who if the brother-in-law wanted her to do yibum and she's refusing, niskak and lo. Just happened here. Sorry. There we go. That if he wanted her to do yibum and she doesn't, niskak and lo. The basin gets involved to try to get her to do yibum. But if she was the one who is demanding that he do yibum and he is not agreeing to it, ain't niskak and lo. We don't. The basin doesn't get involved for her. So when the brisa said that we write it against the shemeres yavam, that's when the brother-in-law wants to do yibum and she's refusing to do yibum. When Shmuel says that we don't write it for her, that's when she wants to do yibum and the husband is not doing yibum. So the Gemara asks, Shmuel why are we establishing that Shmuel's statement is a case when she's demanding? The word tavia, I'm saying demand. The claim is from her side. She wants him to do yibum, and he's saying no. Hi kosen negeres med la rusa mi. But if that's what that statement is, the first statement that was said in the name of Shmuel was, we do write a letter of rebellion about an arusa, la arusa mi. It should say to an arusa, because in that case, it would be a case where she's refusing. If in Shmuel's statement for the shemeres yavam is where we're not writing it because she wants to get married. In this case, if the arusa wants to get married and the husband and the man is dragging his feet, we learned where in the first parak, and also a little bit later that he has 12 months. And more also in the third parak, I think, that he has 12 months to do chuppah, and if he doesn't do it by 12 months, he has to start supporting her, even though they didn't do chuppah yet. Remember that halacha? We mentioned that. So in that case, we wouldn't write the Igeris merit about the Arusa. We would write it to the Arusa that the husband is refusing to marry her, so her ksuva is going to be becoming increased. So when the word merid al arusa, it's the rebelliousness about the arusa. But in this case, it's not about the arusa. We're writing the rebelliousness about the husband to the arusa. So we're saying that the wording is wrong. So the Gemara says halokasha tani la arusa. So that's not a problem. Just say that Rav Tuvi bar Kinsa Amar Shmuel said la arusa and not al arusa. It's very easy to visualize, or to not necessarily visualize, but because we're talking about the wrong sense. But when things were transmitted orally, you say la something instead of al something. We saw back in our Reb Psachim, well, it's more than 2 years ago already, where we're learning our Reb Psachim about the sugi of brachos. Some mitzvos are al achilas matzah, and some brachos for mitzvos are with a lamed. Lehisatef batzitzis, or lahaniach tefillin. Some are le and some are al. Obviously the mitzvos, we're not gonna, the brachos, we're not gonna make as many mistakes, but that orally they transmitted something al instead of la is not a far-fetched thing. So now on 64.8.2, if you're still in the article side, Ma'ishon Shomer Siyavam Delo Damrinan Zil La Damrinan La Zil V'Lo Mifkat. So here is an important thing. Why, if she wants to do Yibam, the Shomer Siyavam, but we don't consider the husband to be rebelling against her when he's refusing to do Yibam, Damrinan La Zil Lo Mifkat. You don't have a mitzvah to have children. So even though you want the Yibum to take place, but there's no mitzvah for you. So therefore, we're not considering your brother-in-law to be rebellious against you. Arusa nami, nema lazil lo mifkata. So if that's the logic for an arusa also, women are not commanded to have children. So she's not commanded to have children also. So nema lazil lo mifkata. We should also say her, you're not commanded to have children. So why do we consider the husband to be in rebellion against her, and that her ksuva would increase in the weeks that he's not doing the ksuva? So that can't be the reason. Ella bava machmas taina. So the reason is where she comes with a real claim. The amra be'inan chutra liyada umar likvura. Because she says, this literally means I need a staff for my hand and a shovel for my burial. Meaning this woman who had an erison said, if he doesn't marry me, no one's going to bury me when I die. I'll be alone. If he doesn't marry me, I'm never going to have kids. What? Chaver Kedisha, right. But again, but still, there's a level of there's other examples. The family would have to pay. I think we saw something earlier about did we? Yeah, to pay. Yeah, we saw in a Mishnah earlier that the husband would have to pay. We were talking about if he was from a higher class or she was from a higher class, that she only goes up and not down. So he would have to pay a certain amount of mourners and wailers and stuff at the funeral. So I don't know if the community would pay for that type of stuff if she so if that's the reason, because she says if I never have a child because he doesn't give me my chuppah, no one's gonna take care of me when I get old. But if that's the reason, the Shmer Yavam can make the same exact claim. I'm a widow already. I don't have any kids. If he doesn't marry me and I never have any kids, I'm going to be all alone and no one's going to take care of me later. So what's the reason? We're trying to figure out the logic for why there would be a difference between the arusa who wants to have chuppah and the man doesn't want, or the Shomer Yavam who wants the brother-in-law to do yibum and he doesn't want. So the Gemara has to say, both cases, it's where the husband. So our answer for Shmuel originally was she was claiming she wanted him to do Yibum and he wasn't answering. But the logic ends up not fitting because there wouldn't be a difference between an arusa and a shemeres yavam. So we have to give a new answer, to explain the contradiction between Shmuel's ruling that we don't write a letter of rebellion against the shemeres yavam, whereas in the brisa that we saw after the Mishnah is that we do write a letter of rebellion for shemeres yavam. Ela'id v'idi shetavahu. Both cases are where the man is demanding the arusa to get to chuppah or the yavam, the shemeres yavam to do yibam. Below kasha, but it's not a contradiction. Kan lachlot v'kan liyabe. In the brisa where we say that she is considered rebellious, that's if all he wants to do is chalitza. If he wants to do chalitza and she's refusing to do chalitza, then we consider her to rebellion. But kan liyabe. But but when he wants to do yibum and she's declining to do yibum, we're not going to consider her rebellious, because yibum isn't the only outcome that he need that's possible. If the brother-in-law will do chalitza, she will then be, to use a slightly maybe a slightly inappropriate term, she'll be a free agent, and she could get married to whoever she wants, other than a Kohen. I mean, she could get married to a Kohen because she's a widow. So midiraisa, let me clarify that. On a diraisa level, if she has chalitza, she is considered a widow. She could be married to a Kohen, but on a dirabanan level, a woman who had chalitza has the same status as a woman who had a get, and she would not be allowed to marry a Kohen. So midiraisa, she could marry a Kohen. Midirabanan, though, she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. So she couldn't necessarily marry anyone who she wanted, because nowadays she couldn't marry a Kohen, but she could marry people other than her brother-in-law. So when he wanted to do yibum and she's refusing to do yibum, the Beis Din won't consider him to be rebellious, because they'll tell him, just do chalitza, that's okay too. The Amar Rabbi Pidas Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Pidas said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Tana lachlos niskakin lo. If he wants to do chalitza, the Beis Din tries to convince her, yeah, chalitza is the best thing to do. Tavli yabe, but if he wants to do yibum, ein niskakin lo. Beis Din doesn't go out of their way to assist him. So the reason is because Rashi says he's not having kavanah for a mitzvah. And we're going to see in a few lines that originally the preference was for the brother-in-law to do yibum, but then later on, they said Chazal changed it and said the preferable thing is to do chalitza, because to marry your sister-in-law is really something that's an erva. It's something that's an improper relationship, but only because when your brother died without children, there's a concept of yibum. We allow yibum, but people nowadays, or at those days already, when they wanted to do yibum, it wasn't necessarily because they were so interested in doing the mitzvah. It was they didn't have the proper kavanas of the right mitzvah. So that's why there was a change, and Chazal eventually, already in the time of the Mishnah, said that chalitza is the preferable way to go. Now, since the time of what? Rabbeinu Gershom, maybe earlier, I don't remember exactly, we only do chalitza. I think Rav Ovadia Yosef wasn't so, he said Ashkenazim did that, but Sfardim never accepted that. Because I think, was it Rav Nisim, in the early 50s, I think, the Sephardic chief rabbi, he was okay with unifying. The Ashkenazim don't do Yibum, we won't do Yibum either. And Rav Ovadia Yosef did not want to capitulate the practices of the Sephardic practices that they were doing Yibum. He didn't want to give that up. He said that, if someone wants to do Yibum, they could Sephardi, they could still do Yibum.
So the husband is alive, right?
No, so in this case, the husband died. So now, but she has a brother without kids. So she has to do yibum.
Right.
So when we say that we write the letter of rebelliousness for a shemeres yavam, there's two cases it could be. One case is where he wants to do yibum. The other case is where he wants to do chalitza. So if he wants to do chalitza, the Beis Din should say, yes, chalitza is the right thing. Try to convince her to do chalitza. And if she refuses, she'd be considered rebellious.
Chalitza means.
Chalitza is
he
where
is willing to marry.
no, Yibum is where he
Yibum.
actually marries her. Chalitza is where they go in the public in front of the Beis Din, and he says, "Do you want to do Yibum?" And he says, "No, I don't." Or she said or she tells him that he doesn't want to do Yibum, and she takes off his shoe and throws over his shoulder and then spits, and then she's the marriage relationship the between the her and any of her brother-in-laws is now severed, and now she could get married to anyone. Like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, she has the din of a grusha, so she's not allowed to marry a Kohen, but she could marry. She's muteris to marry anyone. If she would get married before doing yibum or chalitza, the marriage would take place. The kids wouldn't be mamzerim, but she violated a losase, just a regular negative commandment, not a kares or not a misas based in. I'm pretty sure that for the 150 years, I found a letter, an article from like the 1890s or something that they facilitated because in those days where people started leaving, Eastern Europe or non-Eastern Europe and coming to America, there were cases where someone here or someone there needed to do yibum or needed to do chalitza. So I think I found, from 130 years ago or so, where they facilitated a chalitza somehow to take place. I don't know if they raised money for someone to come here or to go there, whatever, for a chalitza to take place. In those days, that was a more of an aguna situation than the than the situations now. I mean, it was a real thing then; it's a real thing now. Except the case of the chalitza is not as hand tying as it was then, when the brothers were on different continents, and it was really a one time in a lifetime trip to go. So now the Gemara asks, "Maishnali abim delo damrinan le zil nosev itzachrite." Why, in regard to Yibum, the Beis Din doesn't want to, Beis Din doesn't get involved and they don't consider her rebellious? Damrinan le, Beis Din would say to the man, "Zil nosev itzachrite, you can marry someone else." Lachlotz nami, but in the case of Chalitza, Nema le zil nosev itzachrite. We should tell him, go marry someone else. So what's the difference if he's refusing to do Yibum or refusing to do Chalitza? So if it's just you can marry someone else, that can't be the reason behind it, because if that's the reason, the same way if he wants to do Yibum, Basin says, no, you don't do Yibum, just marry someone else. Same thing for Chalitza, they tell him just marry someone else. So the reason is that in the Brisa that we do write the rebelliousness is because that he was rebellious, is because since there is a connection, a gida in this case is like an aguda, a bundle or a knot. There is a connection already through the dead brother's kedushin. Since there's already a connection, I'd rather not marry someone else, or they won't let me marry someone else. Hachanami, but we're in the case of Shmuel, where Yibam Kevan Dagirabi Loka Yavo Achriti. He could give the same excuse that since I have a connection for her, and other one is Chalitza, she's not the Chalitza, they won't let me marry someone else either. So for the claim not let me marry someone else, the basic an explanation is that let's say that his brother died and he has a sister-in-law to do Yibum on, and he hasn't done Yibum, he hasn't done Chalitza. Let's say he wants to marry, Rachel Miriam. He knows someone else, he wants to marry her. Rachel Miriam may refuse to get married to him because she might say, you might do Yibum for her, and I don't want you to be married to two women. I want you only to be married to me. So the fact that he's not doing Chalitza or Yibum might play a role in his not being able to marry someone else either. So 64A3, so this answer to answer Shmuel's statement with the Brisa doesn't work either. So both cases when Shmuel says that the Arusa, that Shmuel says the Shemiras Yavam we don't write a rebelliousness, and the Brisa that we do write a letter of rebelliousness are both cases where he wanted Yibum. So how come Shmuel says something different than the Brisa of Lokasha? It's not a contradiction. Kan b'Mishnah Rishona, kan b'Mishnah Achrona. One is what the original halacha was, and the other is what the later halacha was. The nan, because you learned in a Mishnah, mitzvahs Yibum kodemis mitzvahs chalitza. Mitzvahs Yibum is preferable; it takes precedence to chalitza. We rather you do Yibum than chalitza. But Rishona, originally, that was true. Shem miskaven l'shum mitzvah. When the brother-in-law would do Yibum for the sake of a mitzvah, actually Shem miskaven l'shum mitzvah. But nowadays that they don't have a kavana to do the mitzvah when they do Yibum, Amr mitzvah chalitza kademes mitzvahs Yibum. They said the mitzvah of chalitza is preferable or takes precedence to Yibum. So therefore, the Brisa was said according to the original halacha that Yibum was preferable, but Shmuel, who says Shemer Sev when we don't, that's nowadays when Chalitza takes precedence, and he wanted specifically to do Yibum. So Beitzin says no, she's not considered rebellious when he wants to do Yibum, because nowadays Yibum is not the preferred method. Okay, 2 dots. Ad Masaihu Poches. So how far do you go down until there's no, so either till there's no money left, or you go even in her ksuva, or you go even past that, so that if she would inherit money, the husband could collect that money. And then Rabbi Yehuda says that it wasn't zuzin, but it was tarfikin. So the Gemara asks, "My tarfikin, what is this coin tarfikin that Rabbi Yehuda is talking about?" Rav Sheshes astira. Rav Shesha says it's an astira. But astira, how much is astira? Paga de zuzah. Half a zuz. Tani nami hach. If you learn to brights like this, Rabbi Yehuda Amir Shlosha Tarfikin Shehim Teishamayim Mea V'Chetzi L'Chol 3 Tarfikim is 9 ma, and why? What's the value of 9 ma? Ma V'Chetzi L'Chol, because it's 1.5 ma every day, and so for the 6 days a week that she could work, 1.5 times 6 is 9. Amar le Reb Chia bar Yosef l'Shmuel. So based on the fact of the ma, we understand that that it's half a zuz. Amar Reb Chia bar Yosef l'Shmuel. Reb Chia bar Yosef said to Shmuel, "Ma'ishna iu di'avinan le de Shabbos, u'ma'ishna iu di'avinan le Shabbos." So how come if the husband is rebellious, we add 3 coins a week to her ksuva, or if she's rebellious, we reduce what ends up being the 3 tarfikim, which are 9 ma, which represent 1.5 ma per day. So that's counting Sunday through Friday, and it's excluding Shabbos. How come he gets penalized for his rebelliousness to have to pay for Shabbos, and she does not? So the Gemara says, "Ihi demifchas kapachas," in her case, where her ksuva is getting reduced, l'machzik kischar Shabbos. It doesn't look like she's earning money on Shabbos. So basically, the halacha is, with the idea behind here is, you're not allowed to work on Shabbos, so you can't take money for working on Shabbos. That's called schar Shabbos. There's a halacha though. If you work during the week and also on Shabbos, you can get paid for both because it's called havlah. Havlah literally means it's being swallowed up, meaning the Shabbos work is being included in the weekday work also. I know I witnessed this. I saw someone ask a caterer, "Do you have any jobs, Shabbos jobs that you could hire me for?" He says, "No, it's easier for me to hire non-Jews for Shabbos." Because if you'd only be hiring this guy to work on Shabbos, then there'd be a problem of paying him for the work. So when the amount of money is being reduced, it doesn't look like she's making money by rebelling. But iu de sufik hamosva. But here, when her ksuva is increasing, as we turn to Samach Dalan Beis, Mechzi Kischar Shabbos. It looks like she's making more money on Shabbos. It looks like she's making money on Shabbos.
Go back.
Yeah.
So I also thought though that even if it's a non-Jew, you cannot hire them just for Shabbos. For instance, forget the catering thing, building a house.
Building a house there's a separate halach involved in building a house. There that I think it's a machlokes in the Bavli and Yerushalmi, but they bring a Rabbeinu Tam. It's a separate. Well, was that only about building a shul? But you're saying the non-Jews wouldn't build their house of worship on Shabbos. You can't build your. So we couldn't build a shul on Shabbos. Building a house might be different. Also, a separate thing is that something like building, that's for the most part that would be something public. Anyone walking by could see that that's going on. If you hire someone to work in your house, you don't to let's say just to wash the dishes, let's say other people don't know that someone's doing work in your house. And on Shabbos, it's not just that you're not allowed to do work, but we say in Vishamru, but behemtecha, your animal can't do work either. So let's say if you had a truck, Lazovsky, whatever, and it's being driving around on Shabbos, that would be similar to my animal working on Shabbos in the case where your animal was identifiable that you would go to the marketplace with. So that might be a little different, but when it's publicly seen that your work is being done on your property, let's say, that would be different than Schar Shabbos. Other Shabbos, according to the Ramban, that we know that there's the positive commandment to rest on Shabbos and the negative commandment of not doing malacha. You're not doing malacha, but by people seeing that your animal or your property work is being done on Shabbos, there's a non-fulfillment of the positive commandment of resting on Shabbos.
Okay.
But Schar Shabbos here would be in the case where, let's say, you're babysitting. To babysit for someone on Shabbos, you're not doing any malacha, and you're not violating the asay of Shabbos. So it's private, let's say. But if you're only babysitting on Shabbos, you can't get paid on Shabbos. So you have to do some other stuff, whether it's babysitting or other stuff, work for them during the week also. And then you could also get paid for the work you do on Shabbos because of Havlah. Which Tosfos on the top of Samach Dalet Beis asks. So it's true. Let's say it looks like she's making money on Shabbos, but she's also making money for the other days of the week. So let it be mutter because of Havlah. So Tosfos gives an answer because, which I guess it's important. I would assume this way, but from Tosfos' answer, maybe it's not as simple. When we add or reduce from the Kesuva, do you only do it in whole week increments or is it in daily increments? So Tosfos answers it's in daily increments. If someone, if they in the middle of the week they finally gave in and stopped their rebellion, then the penalties here would stop. So therefore, every day is like a new thing. So therefore, because every day is like a new thing, it's not Havlah. Now I know we might say that Havlah in general sounds like that too. It's this job and that job. But I guess the principle of Havlah is you're not getting paid for this day on Shabbos, you're getting paid for all the work you do for them. But here, the penalty is day by day. So even though you have a penalty from Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and a penalty for Shabbos, the penalty for Shabbos is considered its independent thing, and it's not swallowed up in the payment for the other 6 days. Because right before Shabbos, which everyone says, okay, I'm stopping my protest here, the penalties would stop. So obviously we didn't learn the whole every detail of Schar Shabbos just now, but and this isn't the sugi of Schar Shabbos, but the idea of Schar Shabbos is a very important idea to this Gemara right here. Okay, so now the top line, Samach Dalet Beis. Amar le'Rechia bar Yosef l'shmuel my ben morid l'moredes. Why is the difference that when that there's a big difference in the payment. She gets 1.5, excuse me, when she refuses, when he refuses, he pays 3 a week. So that would be half a tarfik for a day. When she rebels, she gives more. Rashi says a tarfik, but so Amarle Teilman Mishuk Shel Zone. So basically, how come when the woman rebels, it costs more for her than when the husband rebels, it costs him less. So Teilman Mishuk Shel Zonos Mi Sochers Mi. Go look from the marketplace of prostitutes who hires who. From the fact that the man goes out and hires a woman shows that if she's rebelling against him and not engaging in relations, it's harming him more. Therefore, she loses more per week than he loses per week if he is refusing to support her in the ways that we were talking. The Gemara, the way the Gemara we learned the Gemara last week of his rebelling against her. Davar acher, another reason is Zeh Yitzur Mibachutz, Vizu Yitzur Mibifnim. Another reason is the man, his Yitzur is outside and the woman is inside. So it seems that the Gemara is saying is that the man's sexual organs are on the outside and the woman's are on the inside. So when the husband desires his wife and he can't, his desire for her is recognizable, and therefore he could get embarrassed if someone would see it. So therefore, he would be, I don't know, embarrassment may not be the right word, because we know that if someone gets injured, this is, I'm completely talking about something else right now. And we talk about Bava Kama, someone gets damaged, you have to pay 5 things: the damage and the pain and the doctor bills and the loss of work and the embarrassment. So embarrassment is in regard to mazik for damages is its own category. But here, the emotional damage from the rebelliousness, which even though that's emotional embarrassment also, but the act of rebellion against him is more is greater than if he would be rebelling against her. Okay, Mishnah. So we saw this halacha before. Well, we mentioned it. I don't think the Brisa parts of this Mishnah we did see before, but for whatever reason, the Mesor Shas doesn't quote it here. But we saw this in the context if a man would have made a vow that his wife couldn't have a benefit from him. We talked about, would it be like a trustee, a third party who would give money to the wife for her needs. So Hamasharas Isha Shalish. So if they're living apart, he's not paying for her, but basically he has a third party who's paying for her. So he pays, so Reuven's paying Binyamin, and Binyamin is paying Rachel for her household expenses and for her private needs. Lo yivchos la mishnei kabin chitin o me'arba kabin sa'orim. He can't give her less than 2 kabim, so bushels, whatever. There's a more specific volume of how much it is, but we'll just call it bushels. 2 bushels of wheat per week, or 4 bushels of barley per week. If you're going to make the lower quality barley, you need a lot more barley to make the equivalent of wheat bread. Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, "Lo pasuk lo saron el Rabbi Shmuel, sheyisamach la'ado." Basically, no one would allow you. Everyone would say you have to give her wheat. The only opinion who says you give her barley is Rabbi Shmuel, and that's because he lived near Adam. And the Gemara will tell us what that means. But basically saying you can't decide to give her barley. Only Rabbi Shmuel allowed you to pay her barley, and that's because he lived near Edom. And you also give her half a bushel of legumes, half a log of oil. So just to know what that is, when we make kiddush, that's a revius. So if that's 3.3 ounces is a revius, a quarter of a log, a half a log would be 6.6 ounces of oil. I guess for light in the house. Bekav grogeros, 1 bushel of dried figs, omana dvela, or mana, which is a different weight of pressed figs, so they aren't dried, but I guess figs was an important part of the diet for whatever reason, whether that and the legumes were for fiber or just whatever it was, a main part of their diet for whatever reason. That was part of what he would have to pay this, the third party, what Reuven would have to pay Binyamin to give to Reuven's wife, Rachel. Bim lo, but if he doesn't have the figs to give her posek lumas and pears malkam acher, he has to give her fruits from some other fruits that are available. Binosen la, so that's in regard to food. Binosen la mipa mapat umachat selas. He has to give her a bed, a mat, and another type of mat. So the machatzelas is the mapatz is a softer mat than a machatzelas. V'nosen lakipa larosha, he has to give her some type of covering for her head. V'chagar lamasneha. So chagar lamasneha, there seems to be a machlokas who's showing him of what this is. According to one opinion, it goes back to something. I think it's in the 7th parak or the 8th parak of Bava Kama. I think there's some takana that women had to wear underwear. So this means you had to provide her with underwear. And Rabbeinu Yonah says that this is like an apron that she wears over her clothes when she works. Let's see the Rabbeinu Yonah over here. Yeah, Tamid Rabbeinu Yonah. So it's some type of apron or clothes that she would wear over her clothes when she was working. Uminolin mimoed lemoed, and shoes from moed to moed. So I think the Gemara is gonna explain about this. One opinion is you need to get her 3 pairs of shoes a year for Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuos. And another opinion is, well, Pesach and Shavuos aren't that far apart from each other. Why would she need another pair of shoes? So it had to do with the climate that they were in and the weather. But I think we'll see about that more in the Gemara, which we won't get to today, but in the Gemara soon. V'kelim shel chamishim zuz mishana l'shana, and clothes worth 50 zuz for the year. Ve'inosin lo l'chadashim b'mosachama. This we definitely saw several months ago. You don't give her new clothes in the summertime, v'lo shchakim b'mosach shamim, and not slightly worn clothes in the wintertime. Alanosin lo kelim shel chamishim zuz b'mosach shamim. You give her clothes worth 50 zuz in the wintertime, v'hi misgaseh v'lo se'am b'mosachama, and she will be covered with the worn out of it during the summer. And she gets to keep the worn out clothes when the next year she gets another new dress. So we mentioned that makes sense because when the dress is new, it's thicker. And also, if you think about it, how do they do laundry in those days? I think they would take rocks and put one rock on one side of the cloth and another rock on the other, and rub it. So it makes sense that through the normal use and laundering of it, it would get thinner. So you need it for the winter time. She needs it to be warmer, and then as it's getting thinner, it's more comfortable in the summer. So we saw this thing several months ago. So he gives her the food, and now he gives her clothes. And no sin lama kesel l'tzarcha. He also has to give her a ma of silver per week for incidentals, I guess we would call it nowadays, especially if you're at a hotel, for whatever amount of money she needs to spend on stuff. Other stuff that wasn't food or clothes, she has to buy some other stuff also. And she eats with him for every Friday night. So there's a big machlokas Rishonim about this, if it means that they eat together, so that the food that we mentioned at the beginning of the Mishnah does not include food for Shabbos. This Gemara is going to talk about that right away. Or it means that the ona, the marital relation, is that they will be together on Friday night for the marital relations, but it doesn't necessarily literally mean that they will eat together. And we already know the euphemism eating bread could be being with someone's wife. We saw that by Yosef, by the Mitzri. Yosef says that it's a machlokas in the Meforshim how to explain it, but when Potiphar's wife wanted Yosef, he said, "I'm in charge of everything." He trusted everything except with the bread that he eats. So some say that the Egyptians wouldn't eat bread with non-Egyptians because, as Ellie's been saying several times over the past couple months, that the Ibn Ezra says, he says that the Mitzrim at the time were under the influence of India, so they didn't eat meat, and so to people who ate meat were considered infidels to them. They wouldn't eat with them. You don't even have to say the India, but I think it's called the Apis. I looked it up once. That I don't know that you have to include India in it, but they held that this animal was their constellation and deity, or they had multiple ones because according to some opinion, whatever, the Nile, they worshiped the Nile, they worshiped this, they worshiped that, but whatever reason it could be that they didn't eat meat either, but whatever reason, whether you have to include India or not, they didn't. So literally, they didn't eat together. But according to many Meforshim, when he says that that my master Potiphar entrusts me with everything except the bread he eats, meaning I could do anything I want except you're his wife. So that's off limits to me. So to talk about the bread or the ochelasi to eat with him, so that could be euphemism for the marital relations. If he doesn't give her this ma of silver for her spending money, she gets to keep her earnings. So what does she have to do for him? We saw this in the previous 2 Mishnahs ago, I think. A weight of 5 slime of warp thread in Yehuda, Shehim Esher slime begalil, which are 10 slime in the Galil, because the Galil's weights were less. Oh, Mishgal Esher slime Erev Yehuda, Shehim Esrim slime begalil, or 10 units of weight of weft thread in Yehuda, which is 20 slime in the Galil. So I guess when you're weaving, I guess the warp is I know we the warp and the weft, not warp speed, but what? But the one that the 5 slime, that's a thicker thread or whatever. So if you're making that type, she doesn't have to make as much because it already is heavier. Whatever it has, it's the same amount of work, and then the difference between Yehuda and the Galil are just the weights were defined differently there. Lahavdil, in Galil they were using pounds, and in Yehuda they were using kilos. So we know it's 2.2 pounds per kilo, but if you think of it a little less, that if it's only double, so it can make sense. You may have to make 2 pounds a week or 1 kilo a week. It's the same amount. They're just using different units of measurements. Shehain Esrim Vim Haisamanika. So what if they were living separately, but she was nursing their kid? Hochsin la mimasia deha. We can reduce the amount that she has to work. Umosif lamazon said we have to give her extra food. Now we saw 2 or 3 Mishnayos ago that she has to eat a lot more if she's nursing, even if she's nursing only a little bit as an additional milk for a different baby, she has to eat a lot more. So that's that. These amounts that we gave is for a poor person in Israel. This is the minimum amount that he has to give her. But if someone is literally mechubad, which is more honorable or more respected, but it means someone who is more assets. Akolafi kvodo. What?
Upper class.
Right. Akolafi kvodo. It depends on as we said a few weeks ago, what tax bracket he's in. So there is something about here. So if you look in the note on 64B2, note 29, so they mention something. According to Tosos above in the Rush, the amounts prescribed by the Mishnah pertain only to a woman who does not live together with her husband in one dwelling, and thus does not perform the other 6 household chores mentioned in the Mishnah. She can't make his bed and pour his drink and stuff if they're not living together. If she does live together with her husband and perform the other 6 chores, she deducts the amount of time she needs to perform those other chores from the amount she types spinning wool. So basically, because she doesn't live with him, she has more work to do because she doesn't have to do these other things. So we increase the amount of wool. According to the Ran, however, it would appear that even a woman who lives together with her husband and performs the other 6 household chores is required to spin this full amount of thread stated in the Mishnah. So that's important machlokas. Okay, Gemara. Mani Masnisin. Who's the Tana of our Mishnah? Lo Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, lo Rabbi Shimon. It's not Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, and it's not Rabbi Shimon. The Tana, because we learned in a Mishnah in Erevin, the Kama Shiuro. So the halacha is that if you want to go past 2,000 amos, past the civilization, you have to leave food there, 2 meals worth of food there, because that means that you're living there. So therefore, you can go another 2,000 amos past there on Shabbos. So how much do you have to leave in this place so that it extends the distance of how far you could leave the city on Shabbos? The amount of 2 meals for everyone who's going to be traveling that far. So if it's one person, you need 2 meals. If you have 3 people going, you need 6 meals. Mizona l'chol, and it's talking about the weekday meal, v'lo l'Shabbos, and not the Shabbos meal. Diva Rabbi Meir, this is Rabbi Meir's opinion. Hold on a second. Gemara is going to say something interesting. Rabbi Yehuda Mer l'Shabbos. No, it means the amount of food you need on Shabbos, v'lo l'chol, and not the weekday meals. So you might think, Rabbi Yehuda means because you're going on a Shabbos, you need to have Shabbos food worth of food in the for the Erev Tchumen. But the Mishnah immediately says v'zev miskaven lahakel. Both Rabbi Meir and both Rabbi Yehuda are saying a lenient opinion. Rabbi Meir ate bigger meals on Shabbos, so he says you take the weekday meals, that's less. Rabbi Yehuda ate bigger meals on smaller meals on Shabbos because he had richer foods on Shabbos, so he didn't have to eat as much a quantity because he had a higher quality meal. So he says the amount of food on Shabbos is amount, even though for the Erev Tchumen you didn't necessarily have to have that level of quality. But both of those, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, were giving a psak that was a lenient one. Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka Omar, Kikar halakoch bepundion me'arba soin l'sela. So there's again these weights and measurements that's involved, but you have to. Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka says, if a loaf that costs a pundion, when 4 sa'ah, a certain amount of flour costs 1 salah, that's the amount of bread we're talking about. Lahavdil, in Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, I think he mentioned when he went to Philadelphia, he gave them money. He says, how much bread, he gave them a certain amount of money. He says, just give me this amount of bread. And they gave him 3 big puffy breads. And I think it was so big, so he gave one away to someone like as an act of charity. But he, instead of buying bread by the quantity, he gave it for an amount. So he got a lot more bread than he was expecting. But here was kikar klopapundion miarbasin lasela. When the market price for the flour is 4 sa for a sela of grain, and this loaf costs a pundion. Rabbi Shimon Omer shtei yados kikar mishosh kikros lakat. 2 parts of a bread, meaning 2/3 of a loaf, when there's 3 loaves to 1 bushel of flour. Chetzi lebeis hamenuga. And then the Mishnah is pointing out over here, the Brisa, No, this is a Mishnah. So half of that amount is the amount for Beis Hamanuga. So Beis Hamanuga is if you go into a house that has tsaras, if you spend the amount of time to eat a certain amount of meal, then you and all your, or then the clothes on your back that you're wearing become tame. So the amount of bread that the amount of time it would eat to take that, to eat that amount of bread, the amount of bread for that is half of the amount that we just said. The chatzi lifsos hagvia, and a quarter of that amount would make your body tame. There's a derabanan halacha that if you eat a certain amount of food that's regular food, you will become tame, and if you want to eat truma, you have to go to the mikvah. So that's a quarter of the original amount, or it's half of the amount of that you would eat in the, that you don't have to eat in the tsaras house. But if you're in the house with tsaras, the amount of time it would it would take to eat that size loaf or that amount of bread, then the clothes that you're wearing become tamei. And a half of a half of a half, or an eighth of the original amount, the kabel tumas ochlim. That's how big a food could be that it could become tame. So that's probably also a derabanan tuma that the food become tame. It has to have a minimum size. Just because you have a very small speck of food doesn't mean that that food could become tame. So that's the minimum opinion for size for food to become tame. So money. So who does our Mishnah go like? Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. If it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, Tamni Havyan. The amount of the two kabim of wheat flour that you're giving her is only enough for 8 meals. The Rabbi Shimon, if it's Rabbi Shimon's opinion, Tamni Sri Havnan, you're going to have 16 meals. Is 18 meals. And you only need 14 meals for a week. The Gemara Baba Basra in the first chapter talks about that when it talks about tzedakah. You have to provide the people in town for 14 meals a week, 2 meals a day. Even though we exclude Shabbos, we're going to talk about that. So Liolam Rabbi Yochanan ben Brocha Ochram Rav Chisda. So really, we pass Rabbi Yochanan ben Brocha, and this is only enough bread for 8 meals, not 14. But we could. It works out if we work with something that Rav Chisda says. Seimehen shlish lechenveni. A third of the grain goes to the storekeeper. Hachanami aisi tilsa shadi alaihu, meaning the amount that we just talked about for these quantities, that would be like the retail amount. So for that amount of bread, you would only have 8 meals worth of bread. But we're having not the retail, but I guess that we'll call it the wholesale. And so if you take away the third, that's the profit, 8, and you take a half of 8 is another 4. 8 plus 4 is 12, and then the Shabbos meals were excluded. So it's the wholesale price. Hachanami aisi tilse shuri alayhu. But then the Gemara says, Akati Tarti Sri, having that that's only 12. She needs 14 meals. So the Gemara says, Ochel Simo Leile Shabbos. The Mishnah says she eats with her on Shabbos. So the Shabbos meals she eats with him. So then the Gemara says, Hanich Lamanda Amar Achila Mamish. That only makes sense if they literally eat together. Ela Lamanda Amar Achila Tashmish. But when we say they eat together on Friday night, on Shabbos, doesn't mean that they eat together, but they have marital relations. Ma'ikla Meimer, where do the other 2 meals come from? But Tleis are having. And still, the Friday night meal would only be a 13th meal. What about for Shabbos day? So Elikram Rav Chisda. So we have a different statement of Rav Chisda that would explain this. Say mehen mechzel lechenveni. You take away half the price, which was what the storekeeper gets for his profit. Hachanami asya paga ushtadi alaihu. So when we talk about half, it's not half of 8, but it's half of the total. So 14, half 14 is 7. So instead of adding 4 to the 8, we're going to add 4 and half of that in 2. So we're going to add 6 to 8. So it'd be 14 meals. We're out of time because it's time for mincha. So we'll have to continue this next week.